Hello and welcome to an episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. My name is Jacob and today we are taking a look at the Xplus 30cm series MEGARON figure. No, I did not stutter. He is called MEGARON, at least according to the box. I don't actually have the box on hand, sorry to say, for this review. It's in storage at the moment and I don't want to be shoveling through a bunch of other crap just to get to it for this video. I actually did record a little unboxing of this figure, but I actually put that on the AVR Instagram page because I just filmed it on my phone. It was a bit crappy, but if you're interested, the unboxing is there. I'll have links to that down in the description below. But yeah, we have the figure right here. So this is the brand new, it's either late 2020 or early 2021 figure of the classic 1973 Kaiju Megalon from Godzilla vs. Megalon. Possibly one of the greatest movies of all time, even though it is complete schlock. So this is a figure that I have wanted for a very, very long time. I have always been a huge fan of this character. I think Megalon is one of the absolute coolest Godzilla kaiju, one of the best kaiju designs out there. And it has been so difficult for the longest time to get any figures of this thing, let alone something as impressive as a 30cm series Xplus figure. So before I get any deeper into this review, I figured I probably should clarify the whole MEGARON thing, because I did bring it up earlier. So it all comes down to Megalon being a Japanese character, and Megalon, with the L in there, is actually the English translation of Megalon, or the English adaptation of that word. In Japanese, I think it is Megaron or Megaro or something like that. Even I could be wrong, but it all comes down to this figure actually being targeted primarily at a Japanese audience. Hence, why the giant text on the box in English said Megaron. Apparently, they use English text on the box because that's kind of a fashionable in Japan to use English text. Stylistically, I guess, but even though it was actually aimed at a Japanese audience, which I find really fascinating and bizarre. But yeah, that's basically the rundown for why this figure is known as the MEGARON figure, which is pretty cool. But what we actually get with this figure is an extremely movie-accurate, really chunky, large, beautiful incarnation of this character in vinyl form. Just for you guys who, I don't know, have been living in normie land, Xplus figures, they are big, well, they make lots of different stuff, but they're primarily known for 25 to 30 centimeter scale kaiju figures done in hard hollow vinyl. This is Xplus's take on Megalon in this line. Before this, we only had the 25 centimeter scale Megalon figure from quite a while back, and they are now almost impossible to get for a decent price. The thing about Xplus figures is if you don't pre-order them, you're guaranteed to just be struggling to find these things for anything worth paying for what you get, really. The aftermarket price for these things is insane. And actually recently, just the prices in general for Xplus figures, at least in my corner of the world, which is Australia, is just really, really difficult recently because of the whole epidemic thing that happened last year. It meant that postage from Japan rose exponentially price-wise, so getting this was quite a challenge, but I'm glad that I did. I jumped on it the moment I saw that the pre-order was available, because I have wanted an Xplus of Megalon for a very long time. In fact, I've been really trying my best to find as many Megalon figures in general for my collection for the longest time, just because they are such a challenge to find. A lot of these mid-Showa era kaiju, for whatever reason, are really difficult to find in figure form, especially Megalon, which is really surprising because he is such a fan favorite kaiju. It's also so odd that he's never come up in another Godzilla movie. So let's talk about this figure itself. So I bring up the 25cm Megalon figure from a while back, and For the longest time, that seemed to be your best bet for a movie-accurate Megalon. However, this thing, from what I've seen in photos, because again, I have had no chance to actually get that 25cm Megalon in hand, but from what I've seen in photos, this thing is so much more accurate than that thing, and a lot more accurate than any other Megalon figure that I've ever seen. Now, I will actually bring in two figures here, just for comparison. We have the YMSF Megalon figure here, which I recently did an unboxing on this thing, and this is the open mouth version. There we go. Lovely little figure. YMSF are great little boutique figures. They're made in Japan. They're boutique sort of Bandai vinyl-esque figures, but done of far more obscure kaiju. They are kind of pricey for what they are, but they are pretty damn good. And again, this thing really blows this one out of the water. I've actually spent quite some time analyzing shots from the film, just looking over all the detailing on this guy. And yeah, there's a lot of discrepancies between these two figures where the Xplus obviously shines through, which is to be expected because they are known for having really good attention to detail. And another figure which I'll bring in is my custom made, so this is actually one that I hand sculpted myself out of polymer clay. So this is my little hand sculpted Megalon. I made this thing ages ago because I was really frustrated with the lack of Megalon figures out there on the market for any decent price. Don't even don't even ask me if I have a Bandai Megalon figure, because those things are so hard to get for anything worthwhile. They cost in the hundreds of dollars these days, so I'm happy with the Megalon figures that I have on hand at the moment. I kind of felt like between the YMSF and the custom one that I made here, that they kind of both had good bits and both had lacking bits, but then getting this Xplus here, it's like the best of both worlds. I think this is, yeah, again, the best out of these two, so I'm really happy with this guy. These two both scale up at about just like 18-19 centimeters, just because they're quite tall, because they have this horn on their head. But they're around 7-inch scale, or 6 to 7-inch scale in terms of their sort of head height, which does mean that these ones actually go pretty well with your typical sort of Bandai vinyl style figures. Whereas again, this guy here, and we'll do a size comparison later with some other figures, but just to quickly show you, he's very big. He's much taller than 30 centimeters, just because of this big horn on his head, especially. But even for a 30 centimeter Xplus figure, he is actually quite large, and you'll see that later on in the full-on size comparison. So I'm just bringing him in quite a bit closer so we can actually get to see what is my favorite thing about this Megalon, and that is the eyes. The eyes on this thing are done so well. They utilize this lovely clear plastic over these sort of silver sculpted details, which gives you the effect of compound eyes, and this is surprisingly really close to what we see in the movie. I actually think this looks a little better than what we see in the movie, because these are slightly more clear looking. The ones in the film I think are a little bit more cloudy looking. In fact, in general, paint wise, this guy's a lot more clean looking than what we see in the film. For example, his metallic mandibles here, in the movie they're much darker and grimier, so they actually almost blend in with the rest of the grays in his body, but here they're done in a nice bright metallic silver, which yeah, you can say what you want about that, but it does look pretty good. Pretty damn nice, and it could be an easy fix if you are really fussy about that, to just do a wash of a sort of a wash of black paint, I guess, would clear that up, make it look really accurate. It's got, yeah, really good detailing in these mechanical segments, because this guy is a fascinating kaiju. He is basically a giant humanoid beetle augmented with drill hands and metallic mandibles and this big star horn on his head, which shoots lightning lasers or whatever you want to call it. Around the back we have his Carapace here, which has this iconic yellow and black pattern. Again, in the movie this was a bit more hard to see, but I do like the way it pops on this figure. It's done really cleanly. They even have the detailing of these all look like the wing shapes, but they're kind of sticking out. There's, I don't know what you'd call them. You know when how insectoid wings have these sort of branches stemming through them that kind of hold the wings together? Those shapes are kind of imprinted on the front of the carapace. So under these, you'd actually have the wings, but this would be like a hard carapace. But yet it still retains those shapes, and they're pretty cool, and that is very accurate to the film. He's even got little metallic spikes on his tail here. Now, I was kind of worried about this tail. It's kind of like very short and sort of pointy, nubby looking, and going by kind of what I remembered his tail to be like and what the YMSF figure has his tail to be like, I kind of felt that, maybe the YMSF figure is a bit more accurate. He has a much longer tail here, and much more of a irregular segments, so that are a bit less, this bit less pointy and nubby. You can see that the version I did on my custom sculpt here, which I did from looking at photos as well, is also a bit longer, but kind of in between the YMSF and the Xplus. But actually, on further analysis, looking at stills from the film, I'm pretty sure that the Xplus is actually pretty much spot on the money. His tail might be a little bit longer in the movie than it is on this figure, but the difference is very subtle. So I'm gonna give this a pass and say it's pretty much spot on. Also, you can see he's got these lovely segmented scale-like details all across his body, and there's a good attention to detail there too, with all the hair in between these segments, which is very noticeable here, very well sculpted in. Just the sculpt on this guy in general is really neatly done, really fantastic. Look at that. Love that beetle-like face on him. Just that really mean look to this kaiju. This guy was actually designed by the same dude who designed Gigan, as it were. So we can actually quickly, I'll get back to looking at the details, but we can quickly bring in the Xplus 30cm Gigan here, just so you can kind of get the similarities. You can see the guy who designed these two kaiju, he was pretty fond of adding these sort of biomechanical designs and kind of messing around with existing creatures, like this weird reptile chicken with biomechanical designs, this insectoid thing with biomechanical designs, which is pretty cool. I've heard some weird stuff about the dude. I forgot his name, but apparently he was a member of the Japanese Communist Party, and he had this sort of mysterious demeanor about him. And then apparently he ended up disappearing later on, like literally missing person, and then yeah, some weird stories about that guy. But yeah, he designed some pretty cool kaiju back in the day. Alright, so let's go over this guy in quite close detailing, because I really want to show you guys how much detail work they put into this thing. I can't stress this enough. These eyes, they're freaking beautiful. I love the effect of this. Just that lovely shiny clear plastic over this silvery effect that they have going on here, with this lovely warm amber tone. It's great. It is really beautifully done. It's the focal point of the figure. It's beautiful. I love it. You got this little antenna here. They're done really nicely as well. Done in this nice beige color to help them pop out. Very accurate to the film. Very nice. They're the most delicate feature on this guy, so be careful with those. But again, this is vinyl is a fairly soft, pliable material, so you probably won't snap those unless you're being a complete a-hole to this thing. Down here we have again his pincers. They are, like I keep saying, a lot cleaner looking, a lot brighter looking than they were in the movie, but that does not bother me because they are sculpted impeccably, even down to the little details like these diamond-like shapes on the side here. You can see the inside of his mandibles there looking really good. I really love the way that these open in the movie, the way that the outer ones open up this way, and then there's these inner ones which open up that way, and you can kind of see them, what they look like open if you look on the YMSF figure, although I'm not too happy about that like bright pinkish red that they painted in there, but it does demonstrate the idea to you guys in action. So moving down to his collar here, got that lovely fuzz shape going around his neck. Really nice detail there, because Megalon did have a lot of this fuzz around his body. I don't quite remember it being this long, but it does not just detract on the figure in any way. It looks actually pretty accurate to how he was. And got these lovely scale-like patterns crowning his neck here. I kind of remember these looking a little bit more organic, a little bit less triangle-y. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe these two bigger ones here seem to sort of angle to the side a little bit more and kind of petal out more naturally. These kind of look like their fangs hanging down a little bit, or like a weird triple cravat or something. So that looks a little bit less organic than he did in the film, but that could just be my imagination there. But they are still pretty accurate from what I've seen in photos. Around the back of his head, he's got this big carapace shape, like a rhinoceros beetle, looking really good. I love the angles on this thing, and the texture especially. Xplus figures have a knack for just adding this lovely organic texturing to even the most smooth parts of their figures, the sort of ones you'd expect to be really bland, but they really pop with this cool texture that they do, really rough, like a stone or something like that. Down here we got more of that texture, and then we get to his metallic horn. Now, there's kind of a joint where you can see the horn is glued on to the body. I feel like in the film, the joint was a lot more smooth. I don't think there was kind of this line here, but as far as seam lines go on this figure, this is the only real notable one I can think of, and it is very minimal. Unless you're like feeling around and searching for it, it's not going to detract from it at all. But bear in mind that the horn was clearly cast in a separate piece of plastic and was attached on. And again, at the top, it's got this lovely star shape, which is very accurate to how it was in the film. I think the top little prongs might be ever so slightly thinner than they were in the film. I feel like they were slightly more even with these bottom ones, slightly more star-shaped. I mean, they were thinner, but like, I'm just talking like half a millimeter difference on this figure than what it really should be. So just bear that in mind. I'm being really nitpicky because this thing is so well done that I can only really be nitpicky. Around the front of his body, got more of this scaling and lots of different textures. You got this strip of, I don't even know what you'd call it, strip of detailing that runs, detailed scale work or whatever, that runs down from his chest all the way down to the base of his tail here, where you can see there is that other seam line for the tail. It is there, but it isn't like, it's the most minimal seam line in a very hidden place, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. But this kind of segment here, it feels less organic than I would like, or that I kind of made my version, when you look on my sculpted piece, really kind of organic. Try to make it look, you know, as bug-like as possible, but I think this is actually not very accurate to how he was in the movie. I think in the movie it was a little bit more costumey looking, less organic like it is on the figure here, so, you know, kudos to Xplus for keeping that consistent and accurate. And around here we got all these little yellow orangey scale patterns that are kind of raised and in detail all the sides of his body here. And these are again beautifully done. They really capture what he looked like in the movie. All the shapes seem to be painstakingly mimicked from all the weird chaotic patterns that he has, down to like it even kind of dropping down sort of unevenly on this side with these little patterns kind of, you know, it looks kind of clean on this side, how it's not coming onto this more like belt scale work. I don't know how you describe that, but down here they kind of look like they're flowing down off of this part of his body down onto this place, like it's not meant to be there, but that is exactly how the suit was. So that is really good attention to detail on their part. You can see they even have a lot of detailing. Sorry about the lighting being a bit iffy here, but they have a lot of detailing on the underside of his arms as well, showcasing all those scales and all the little hairs underneath them, which look really good. The paint is a little bit flat in some of these areas, It's very minimal, but it is very accurate. Megalon. He doesn't have too much going on in the paintwork in these areas, even on the actual suit itself. And again, I love the texturing on these things. Really nice, slight roughage to them, which just makes them pop. Around here, I love the sculpt of his hair, looking really organic, really rough, and it just sort of helps crown off all these segments. And him being really segmented, it does help to hide the seam lines, especially around the knees here, and a lot of areas like that, which makes this figure look really clean in general. Same with the arms here, where it's got the hair kind of coming out from that joint there. Really nicely done. There's no, again, you can't move it at all. It feels glued in, and I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not going to make sure by messing with it, because that's something I don't want to break. And we got this cool drill hands with all this lovely detailing here. Very, very accurate to how he was in the film. Very crisply done. I commend them on this. This is really well done. Down to just the contours of all of these little angles here. Not dry brushing, the airbrushing, the subtle dark highlights that they add all over this thing just to help it pop even more than just having that sculpt there. The weird thing about Megalon is the way his drills work just defies all logic, because what he's meant to do is his hands have both halves of one drill. He's meant to clasp his hands together like this, and then at the wrist they spin. Like the drill spins as if there was one axle running down his arms, yet there are two separate arms, which just defies all logic. I hope you can understand what I'm saying there. So you can picture this flat section on either drill merging together, and then at the middle somehow there being like an axle and it's spinning as one drill bit. It's insane and kind of stupid, but it's fascinating. Just this other fascinating thing about this character. Such an enigma, aren't you, Megaron? So moving around to the back, we have his Carapace, which I really love. They really perfected these chaotic tiger-like striped yellow patterns running down his Carapace shell here, as well as all the texture on this shell as well. These sort of raised line work that he has here, which is very accurate to how he was in the film. Now there is some like very mild sort of paint slop, I think, just around these areas here, especially like right there. Because of the texture that he has on his shell, some of these areas aren't quite as perfect as I would like. So they do look kind of screen printed in some areas. And there was also the discrepancy that the yellow is a lot more glossy than the gray-black paint that he has on the rest of his shell here. So there's kind of a difference where you can tell the yellow is paint. But that's a really minor thing. And I would have also liked if they did add a bit of an airbrushed black just around the edges of his wings. Or the carapace here, I should say, and around the middle, and around the edges, just to help blend them in more, make them look a little less overly bright and painted on. That would have really added a really cool effect to them. Just a slight dark airbrush, kind of like they did on his drill hands with a slight black airbrush. Very minor thing that I would have done, which I tried to attempt to do on my custom sculpted one. But I didn't have an airbrush, so I did it by painting it, which wasn't ideal, but the effect did help a lot, and I think that would have helped this figure a little bit more. But as it stands, still looks striking and really beautiful and helps this figure pop from a distance. But again, you can just kind of see in close up what that does look like. And coming down, we have his feet here. He's got these two really brilliant metal claws here. Again, love that rough fur texture around the back here. There's his little tail. Like I said earlier, I think it could be a little bit longer, but it is pretty close to how it was in the film, if not perfectly accurate, and I'm just overthinking things. There you guys go. Lovely, lovely airbrushed silver on the tips of these spines. Really effectively done there. And just on the other side, it's really simple and kind of smooth under here. But yeah, again, very accurate to the character and to the suit. Under his feet here, you just got the trademark info, so you've got Toho Co Ltd, Plex 2020, made in China, Xplus, and a little serial number. He doesn't have much detailing under his feet, just kind of like a flat design, which probably is fairly accurate to the actual suit. And I do really like the silver airbrushing that they did on his nails here. It's really well done. I love the nice sharp sculpt of these as well. Unfortunately, I just have a sneaking suspicion that the paint will just end up rubbing off of these claws eventually. Especially since you really can't articulate his legs, just to kind of help avoid his nails really touching the ground as much as you can. That's something I found for a lot of Xplus figures, is their nail tips, or little pointy bits, they always tend to be the first places to start having paint rub on a lot of my other Xplus figures. So I am worried about that, especially since when you do end up placing him down, his nails do inevitably kind of touch the ground, especially this one right here. So I got to be really careful of kind of dragging him around if I don't want those to get scuffed up. But yeah, overall this thing has a really phenomenal sculpt. It's very dynamic. I just love this design. There's so much going on with all the scales on him, all the different metallic parts, all the little hairs really in between these carapace sections really help to break it up and add some more texture in here. It's really vibrant, really cool. And of course we have this wonderful wonderful pattern running down his back, makes him pop from all angles. It's so good. Now, I've heard a few people say that his pose is a bit bland, being kind of neutral, which, you know what, it kind of is. It's very sort of neutral, but this design is so good, though, and it has all these elements that just pop out. The paintwork's nice and vibrant. His eyes, especially, they really pop. It's just something that draws you to this thing. All the silver, all the shapes. Yeah, I don't really mind that the pose is kind of more neutral and you can't really mess with it, because it is just such a striking design to begin with and so well executed here. This is actually really gaining traction as one of my favorite Xplus figures in my collection, and it's always cool to have more kaiju than just Godzilla in Xplus form, because there is so many great kaiju out there that it's a shame that we don't get more of them done like this, and it's so hard to actually get these things. So at the time that I'm releasing this video, this thing is probably going to be next to impossible to find for a decent price. I'm probably going to have only aftermarket prices to grab this thing, which is a bit of a bummer. So I do apologize for putting out my review kind of late. But yeah, I'm still glad I actually got there with this thing, because it does deserve its own video. But speaking of other kaiju, let's bring in some kaiju which would be really cool to have next to this thing. So again, I brought in the 30cm Gigan Xplus figure. The thing is, they pair really great because the designs are just made for each other, and they were in the same movie together, so it's just like a match made in heaven, right? But this Gigan seems a little short next to this Megalon, or vice versa, this Megalon seems a little tall next to this Gigan. It still works, they're still generally the same scale, but looking back at the film, they were a lot more in scale with each other. They stood at approximately the same height. The way you can kind of imagine it is, you see where the stunt actor's arms and shoulders would be, where their kind of knees and their legs are. You kind of have to go by that to figure out, like, generally the heights of these kaiju. But these guys really sort of stood head to head with each other from what I saw in clips of that movie when I was looking back at it just now. And especially going from the front, Gigan looks so skinny from the front. He's much wider from the side. He looks really great from the side. From the front, he's kind of skinny looking, and especially next to this Megalon, which is so chunky, it does make pairing them a little bit but, you know, I still have these two paired together when I do display them, obviously, but that is just something to bear in mind. If you do have the 30cm Gigan figure from Xplus, don't quite scale as well as I would like. Another figure that I can bring in is my Jet Jaguar from Diamond Select Toys. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the Xplus of Jet Jaguar, because I'm not made of money. But this thing works just as well, and it costs next to nothing, although these are increasingly more and more difficult to get, especially outside of the US, because I live in Australia, so this one was actually kind of a pain to get in the first place. But this is a really nice companion piece, and again, I'm not entirely sure how well he scales. The shoulders and stuff do seem to line up really well, that you can picture that there being a suit actor. This guy and this guy, and them scaling up really nicely. So perhaps he does scale up, but Gigan might be on the short side a little bit, especially since you got to imagine that the person's head would be in the neck here, and Jaguar's head is quite a bit more higher. So, I don't know. These are a really great pairing of figures, because now I've almost got the full lineup of Godzilla vs. Megalon. Naturally, we're missing Godzilla, the other titular character, which is a bit of a bummer. I do really like the 1973 design. It's like the definitive Showa superhero Godzilla, in my opinion. But yeah, I would really love an Xplus of that one, but unfortunately I don't really have any of these sort of 70s Xplus Godzillas in my collection. Actually, I've barely got any figures of the 70s Godzillas. They're really hard to get as well as Megalon figures in general, which is just baffling to me, but it is what it is. Before we get on to the size comparison, I might just bring in a couple of other figures that we can just look at really quickly. You got another Showa Xplus figure, which is the Baragon figure here, another really chunky figure, and these two pair really nicely. Even though they were never in a film together, I just like the look of these two together, because they have a lot of similarities too, in just their general pose and the bulkiness, and kind of they have pointy bits and things, and I don't know, they look good together. Anyhow, let's get to the size comparison, and then I'll close off this review. So there it is. I hope you enjoyed that little size comparison. You got to have a good feel of how big this MEGARON figure is next to your other kaiju. Like I said, he is really chunky. He's quite big for a 30cm Xplus figure, which makes me happy, because I think the bigger these figures can be, the better. It's, you know, you get more size, more vinyl for your money, which is always great. Although, yeah, scaling issues with Gigan is just its own little thing, but I'm not too fussy about that at all, to be honest. So yeah, let's sum up this this review here. All in all, I highly recommend this thing. Really great. It's long overdue that they put this figure out, and I think they did it pretty damn perfectly. I have no complaints about this thing, in all honesty, aside from the price and especially the shipping costs. But aside from that, as a figure itself, fantastic. It's really well done. The sculpt is excellent. Like I said, probably the most accurate Megalon figure that you're likely to get anywhere, aside from maybe some like custom garage kits or something along those lines. I actually think I might have heard that this thing might be based off of one of those. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be thinking of something else. But yeah, aside from some like really niche custom stuff, this is definitely the best Megalon figure on the market. He's extremely accurate, very well done, very professionally made. Doesn't look cheaply done or anything like that. The paintwork is excellent on him. It really pops. It's actually pops more than he did in the film, so my only real complaint might be in terms of accuracy. Some of the metallic parts, like his mandibles again, might be a bit too bright. The eyes a little bit too clear and nice looking, compared to how they were in the film, where they're a bit more foggy. And same with the yellow on his back might be a little bright. It might have looked nice if they got an airbrush and just lightly did some dark gray just slightly around here, so it would just ever so slightly tinge the edges of this yellow with a bit of more of a foggy color. I think that could have been a cool effect, but completely unnecessary either. The way they did it is really beautifully done as is. So yeah, all in all, very, very good release from Xplus. I really look forward to seeing what they're going to do next. I actually saw recently that they are going to be doing a Large Monster Series Rodan 2019 figure, which I must get my hands on. That thing looks amazing. There's not enough 2019 Rodan figures, because I think that was my favorite kaiju from the 2019 movie Godzilla King of the Monsters. Rodan in that film was great, and there's definitely not enough figures of him out there. And they're also going to be putting out a favorite Sculptors line Godzilla 1954 figure, which I'm quite obsessed with being a completionist and getting all the 1954 Godzilla figures I can, so I really want to get my hands on that. Even though I think detail-wise there's some inaccuracies in there, it's just, I don't know. I'm never satisfied with 1954 Godzillas for whatever reason. There was always just nitpicks I have with them. Except for the Yuji Sakai Godzilla 1954 Xplus figure, but I can't find that anywhere. They just don't exist on any site, even for exponentially large amounts of money, which is baffling. But that one looked perfect. Anyway, I'm going off topic now, so yeah, to sum up this review, this is a really great figure, really difficult to get, but if you do manage to get your hands on this one, you won't be disappointed. This Megaron figure is superb, and it has the seal of approval from me, and the Jet Jaguar seal of approval, which is something that hasn't appeared on my channel since like the second video I ever did, and then it just stopped happening, which is hilarious. But yeah, thank you guys so much for checking this review out, and I hope to see you in my future videos, but until then, may your vinyl be a radiated vinyl. Over and out. Bye.